Imagine this, you're sitting across from a woman who once seemed like everything you wanted. Her smile had you hooked. Her attention felt like oxygen, and her approval made you feel alive. But now, something has shifted. She leans back, her eyes colder than before. Her replies shorter, almost dismissive. She withholds warmth, and in that silence, you begin to panic. You rack your brain, searching for what you did wrong, replaying every word, every text, every moment, desperate to get back to the version of her who once seemed so enchanted by you. That's the trap Schopenhauer warned about, the brutal truth that shook men in his time and still hits like a punch today. He stripped away the romantic illusions and exposed what most men refuse to see. Attraction isn't built on your effort, your begging, or your blind devotion. It's built on dynamics, power, and whether or not you hold your frame when tested. You've probably felt it, the tightening in your chest when she pulls away. Most men make the same mistake. They chase harder. They send longer messages. They buy gifts. They apologize for things they didn't even do wrong. They think, if I just prove how much I care, she'll soften. But here's the brutal truth: the more you bend, the more she loses respect. The more you show fear of losing her, the more she feels she can control you. And once respect is gone, attraction dies with it. Schopenhauer wasn't saying women are evil. He was saying they are wired to test the strength of the man in front of them. Not with logic, but with subtle games, silences, and contradictions. If you don't see the test, you fail it. And failure feels like heartbreak. Think about how many times you've ignored the signs. She flirts with another guy in front of you, not because she wants him, but because she wants to see your reaction. Do you panic? Do you sulk? Do you lash out? Or do you stay calm, indifferent, unshaken? She cancels plans last minute, then watches if you punish her with neediness or respond with strength. She throws a sarcastic jab, a joke that cuts deeper than it should, just to see if you'll break or laugh it off with unbothered composure. These aren't accidents. They are psychological feelers, designed to measure if you're the man she respects or the man she can control. And if you're the latter, she might keep you around for attention, for comfort, but never for true desire. So what do you do when faced with these traps? First, stop trying to win her back with effort. The moment you feel yourself begging, explaining, convincing, you've already stepped into weakness. Instead, flip the script. When she pulls away, you don't chase, you match her distance. When she withholds affection, you don't plead, you focus on your mission, your purpose, your life outside of her. When she tests with sarcasm or silence, you don't fold, you respond lightly or not at all. Indifference is the shield that breaks manipulation. Presence is the sword that cuts through games. You show her that her approval is not your oxygen, that your frame exists with or without her. And paradoxically, that's when attraction reignites. Because respect is born from boundaries, not sacrifice. Men forget this because society trains you to think love is about giving endlessly. Movies tell you to chase, songs tell you to beg, friends tell you to compromise. But deep down, you know the truth. Every time you overinvested, every time you let your boundaries slide, every time you clung harder, she slipped further away. And every time you held your ground, every time you didn't flinch, every time you made it clear that your life would not collapse without her, she leaned back. It feels almost unfair, but it's reality. She wants a man who cannot be broken by her moods. Not a tyrant, not a brute, but a man rooted so deeply in himself that her storms only test his strength, never uproot him. This is where Schopenhauer's brutality still matters today. His words cut through illusions because they don't paint women as angels or devils. They paint them as human, wired to test, wired to seek strength, wired to pull where they sense weakness. And you, as a man, have only two options. You can play the fool forever over giving, forever explaining, forever chasing approval. Or you can wake up, see the tests for what they are, and meet them with the calm indifference of a man who refuses to lose himself just to keep someone else. That is where attraction lives. That is where respect is born. That is where you stop being the puppet and become the one who writes the rules. Have you ever recognized yourself in this exact situation? What happened next? Which one of these toxic behaviors have you faced before? Be specific in the comments. What's the hardest part of walking away when you know she's manipulating you? You've probably noticed that women rarely test you directly with words. They don't say, "Let me see if you're strong enough for me." Instead, they cloak it in behaviors that make you second-guess yourself. It could be the subtle way she delays her response to your text after you've been consistent. It could be how she suddenly shows less enthusiasm for plans she once seemed excited about. It could be that shift in tone from warmth to coolness, from softness to sharp edges. These are not random mood swings. They are pressure points, designed consciously or not to reveal whether you'll collapse into neediness or stand solid in your frame. When you fail these moments, the result is always the same. She loses respect, and once respect is gone, no amount of love, gifts, or begging will revive it. Most men think respect can be negotiated back, like, if I just prove my loyalty harder, she'll see my value. But respect isn't earned through overcompensation. Respect is preserved by never giving it away in the first place. The truth that men don't want to admit is this: women test because they crave reassurance that the man they're with is unshakable. If she can rattle you, if she can make you dance with every withdrawal of affection, then she knows she's with someone weaker than her impulses. And once she feels stronger than you, the polarity is gone. Look back at the moments where you gave too much. Maybe you bought flowers after she ignored you for days. Maybe you rearranged your entire schedule because she cancelled last minute and then rescheduled on her terms. Maybe you apologized for simply expressing what you wanted because she reacted with irritation. Each time you did this, you thought you were saving the relationship. In reality, you were teaching her that your boundaries are flexible, that her approval matters more to you than your own self-respect. And once that pattern is set, she will keep testing, pushing further, until there's nothing left of the man she was once drawn to. The only way out of this loop is brutal detachment from her emotional games. That doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It means you stop caring about passing her shifting tests. When she withholds affection, you don't double your effort. You simply redirect your focus. When she withdraws, you let her go and continue your life as if nothing has changed. When she tries to provoke jealousy, you refuse to give her the reaction she expects. You don't punish, you don't plead, you simply stand unmoved. That unmoved state is where your power is, because the moment she realizes her tricks cannot bend you, the game loses its hold, and paradoxically, that's when she feels compelled to respect you again. This isn't about being cold for the sake of cruelty. It's about embodying the truth that your value doesn't shrink when someone else withdraws their attention. Women sense this more deeply than they admit. They can feel when a man's identity is fragile, when his worth depends on her validation. And they can feel when a man is so secure in himself that her moods, her tests, her contradictions do nothing to his core. That difference is everything. The first man becomes her toy, the second becomes her anchor, and whether she admits it or not, every woman craves the second far more than the first. But here's the hard part: you don't get to fake this strength. You can't just play indifferent while secretly panicking inside. She'll sense the crack in your frame instantly. This is where most men fail. They try to act alpha while still being emotionally enslaved to her reactions. Real power comes when you no longer need to pretend. When you actually don't care whether she's distant for a night or cold for a week. Because your mission, your values, and your self-respect occupy more of your mind than her temporary withdrawal. That's when your indifference is genuine. And that's when you stop being tested, not because women stop testing, but because you stop being vulnerable to the test itself. So, what do you need to do right now? First, audit yourself. Think about the last time you bent over backward for a woman who wasn't meeting you halfway. Remember the feeling, the exhaustion, the humiliation, the sinking realization that your effort only made her colder. That's the moment you should have pulled back, not leaned forward. From now on, commit to one simple law: never invest more than she invests. If she pulls away, match her. If she's cold, you stay calm. If she doesn't respect your boundaries, you don't argue, you show her with your actions that disrespect ends the interaction. That is the battlefield strategy. No speeches, no pleading, just quiet strength, backed by action. It's not easy at first. Every fiber of your conditioning will scream at you to chase, to explain, to fix. But understand, chasing weakness never wins. Let her feel the silence. Let her confront her own games. Let her realize that her manipulation cannot move you. That's when the roles flip. That's when she sees you again, not as a desperate man clawing for approval, but as a man who commands respect by existing unapologetically in his own frame. That's the kind of man women cannot resist, because he is the rare one who refuses to play their game, yet somehow wins it by standing outside of it. So let me ask you this: when was the last time you caught yourself over-investing in someone who wasn't giving the same back? How did it end? Have you ever tried holding back instead of chasing just once to see how quickly the power shifted? And be honest, what's harder for you, setting boundaries or actually enforcing them when tested? There's a reason Schopenhauer's words cut men so deeply, even now. He was pointing at something most men sense but refuse to admit. The dynamic between men and women is not built on fairness. It's built on polarity. And polarity means there is always a push and a pull, a test and a response, a balance of power. When you forget this, when you believe that affection will be enough to carry the relationship, you set yourself up for collapse. Because affection without respect is like water poured into a broken cup it never holds. Respect is the vessel, and the moment she no longer respects you, the relationship starts draining out. Think back to when you first attracted her. It wasn't because you begged. It wasn't because you sacrificed everything for her. It was because you had something solid in you, a calm confidence, a sense that you didn't need her, but you chose her. She felt that difference. That's what pulled her in. But the trap begins once men start believing they must maintain her approval at all costs. That's when you start rearranging your life around her moods, saying yes when you want to say no, hiding your real opinions because you're afraid of rocking the boat. You think this is love, but she feels it as weakness, and weakness, no matter how romantic you dress it up, erodes attraction. You've seen it happen. The guy who can't stand up to his girlfriend, who jumps the second she snaps her fingers. At first, she might laugh about it, even brag that he's so devoted. But eventually, her tone shifts. The laughter disappears. She starts rolling her eyes when he hovers. She stops respecting his words because she knows he won't back them with action. She starts talking to other men, not even out of desire, but out of a subconscious hunger for the strength she no longer feels from him. And the sad part, he blames her. He thinks she changed. But the truth is, he trained her to treat him that way by giving up his frame piece by piece. The shift you need to make is brutal but liberating. Stop measuring your worth by how much a woman loves you, and start measuring it by how much you respect yourself in her presence. Because here's the irony: when you respect yourself fully, she will respect you more. When you stop over-explaining, stop apologizing for your standards, stop softening every edge just to keep her happy, you stop bleeding out the very energy that attracted her in the first place. That edge is what she's drawn to, not cruelty, not arrogance, but the unshakable presence of a man who won't trade his self-respect for her temporary affection. Now let's get practical. When she tests you with silence, don't fill it with desperate words. Let the silence hang. When she tries to provoke jealousy by mentioning another guy, don't interrogate her, just smile lightly as if it didn't land and change the subject. When she cancels plans without respect, don't argue, simply don't reschedule until she makes the effort. These aren't games, they're boundaries. They communicate, without drama, that you're not a man to be toyed with. And the more you enforce these small boundaries, the less she'll even attempt the bigger manipulations. Because women sense when they're dealing with someone who cannot be moved by tricks. Of course, this requires discipline. It requires you to sit with discomfort when your instinct screams to chase. It requires you to rewire the habit of giving too much, too soon. It requires you to actually believe deep in your bones that you are enough without her. That's the hardest part. Most men can fake indifference for a week, maybe two, but eventually the mask slips and the panic returns. That's why this isn't about playing a role. It's about becoming the man who no longer sees her tests as threats, but as opportunities to demonstrate strength through calm. Every test is a mirror. It shows you how much control you really have, not over her, but over yourself. And here's where Schopenhauer's brutal truth still burns today. Women will always test, because they are wired to seek stability in a man. You don't escape this by finding the right woman. You don't escape it by thinking love will erase it. You face it by becoming the man who doesn't flinch. Once you are that man, the tests no longer feel like traps. They feel like wind brushing against stone. You stop fearing them. And in that moment, you become free, not just in dating, but in every part of your life, where respect matters more than approval. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you stayed silent instead of explaining yourself endlessly what happened? Which of these boundaries, silence, indifference, or pulling back, do you struggle with most? And if you were honest with yourself, do you respect yourself more in your relationships now than you did years ago, or less? There's a hidden cost every time you ignore this truth. When you give away your frame, when you bend to every test, you're not just losing her respect, you're losing yourself. Slowly, piece by piece, you chip away at your confidence, your masculinity, your sense of who you are. At first it feels harmless, just a small compromise here, a softened edge there. But over time, you look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. You're anxious, reactive, constantly questioning whether you're good enough. And the cruel irony is that the harder you try to prove your worth, the less worthy you appear in her eyes. This is why men end up drained, bitter, and confused, wondering why their love was never enough. The answer is simple: love without respect is nothing. Schopenhauer's words weren't meant to make you hate women, they were meant to wake you up. He was ripping away the fantasy that women will love you unconditionally the way you might love them. He was saying, stop expecting them to play by your rules of fairness. See the game for what it is, and once you see it, you stop being a pawn in it. You realize that her tests are not obstacles to your happiness, they are invitations to prove to yourself that you cannot be shaken. Every sarcastic jab, every withdrawal, every cold shoulder is another chance to stand in your frame and show, without words, that you're not here to be bent. But let's get brutally clear. How do you live this out in the modern dating world, where everything is amplified by social media, endless options, and constant comparison? You must build habits that reinforce your strength daily. You must live a life that doesn't orbit around her. When she texts late, you don't drop everything to respond. When she hints at other men, you don't spiral, you lean further into your purpose. When she pulls back emotionally, you double down on your own growth, your own mission, your own standards. Your energy is never fully invested in her approval. It's invested in the man you're becoming. That's the battlefield mindset. Not cold, not cruel, but immovable. And here's the paradox. The less you need her approval, the more she respects you, the less you chase, the more she leans in, the less you apologize for having boundaries, the more she admires your strength. Women are not attracted to men who worship them. They are attracted to men who worship themselves enough to never collapse under pressure. If you think this is selfish, ask yourself, how many times did your selflessness get you what you wanted? How many times did giving everything leave you with nothing? Respect is not given to martyrs. Respect is claimed by men who live with unshakable self-possession. The tactical key here is consistency. One strong moment doesn't save you if you collapse the next. You cannot hold your frame once, then spend the next week chasing. You cannot laugh off a test one night, then break down the next morning. She will sense the inconsistency, and the respect will vanish again. So you must train this into yourself. You train it by practicing restraint, by holding silence when you want to explain, by keeping your schedule instead of bending it, by letting her feel the weight of your boundaries. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even terrifying. But soon, it becomes natural. Soon, you realize that the power was never in her games. It was in your reaction to them all along. And once you master this, something remarkable happens. You stop fearing loss. You stop dreading rejection. You stop trying to predict her every move. Because you finally understand you can survive her silence. You can survive her withdrawal. You can survive her disapproval. And the moment you believe that, you become untouchable. That's the ultimate freedom Schopenhauer was pointing toward, not freedom from women, but freedom from dependence on their validation. When you reach that point, you are no longer playing the same game everyone else is. You've stepped outside of it, and from there, you control the frame of every interaction, because nothing she does can destabilize you. So now, ask yourself, what part of you have you been sacrificing just to keep her interested? How many times have you lowered your standards because you were afraid to lose her? And the hardest question, are you willing to let go of the version of you who chases approval, so you can become the version who commands respect? Here's the hardest truth you'll ever swallow. She doesn't break you. You break yourself by refusing to see the game for what it is. Every time you begged when you should have walked away. Every time you softened when you should have stood firm. Every time you let her moods dictate your value. You were handing her the tools to dismantle you. Schopenhauer was hated because he ripped the veil off that illusion. He forced men to admit that women are not the source of your strength. They are the test of it. And if you fail the test, the collapse is yours to own. Think of the man who can't let go. His girlfriend cheats, flirts, disrespects, and still he clings, saying, "But I love her." That isn't love, that's enslavement. Or the man who bends his entire personality to fit her preferences, losing his own hobbies, his friends, his purpose, until he's a shadow of who he once was. That isn't partnership, that's erasure. And what does she feel when she looks at him? Pity, contempt, a hollow disappointment that she can't even explain. because she wanted a man to stand beside, not a servant to stand under her. The tragedy is that he thought his devotion would make her stay, but devotion without strength only drives her away faster. So what's the shift? It's radical detachment. Not detachment from love, but from the outcome. You must be willing to lose her to keep yourself. You must be ready to say no, to walk away, to watch her storm off without chasing, because the second she senses that you'll do anything to keep her, she knows she can control you, and control kills attraction. But when she realizes you're unafraid of losing her, that you are complete with or without her, that her disapproval does not bend your spine, that's when the respect returns. That's when the tests stop feeling like warfare and start feeling like sparks against steel. You don't break, so the fire only sharpens you. This is not just about women, it's about your entire life. The man who collapses for a woman will collapse for a boss, for friends, for society. He will be bent by every demand, pulled by every emotional manipulation, until he has nothing left. But the man who learns to stand in his frame, to refuse to trade respect for approval, becomes untouchable. Women sense it, men sense it, the world senses it. That's why this lesson, as brutal as it sounds, is liberating, because once you accept it, you no longer live in fear of being abandoned. You no longer live in fear of not being enough. You realize that enough is not something she gives you, it's something you embody. And here's the one-liner you need to etch into your mind. She didn't break you, she revealed what you were too afraid to protect. That's all. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every manipulation, those weren't curses, they were mirrors, showing you the cracks you refused to fix. Now you know. Now you see. And now you have a choice: stay the man who breaks at every test, or become the man who cannot be broken, because in the end, that's the only man she'll ever truly respect, the only man the world will follow, and the only man you can stand to see when you face yourself alone. So let me leave you with this. Are you still chasing women who drain your respect? Or are you ready to cut them off cold? Do you have the courage to stop explaining and start acting? And most importantly, are you ready to live as if your worth is unshakable, no matter who stays or who leaves?